July 18th, 1944. Late afternoon settles over the English Channel. Inside the conning tower of U-672, a young German officer studies a chart that makes no sense, at least not by the rules he was taught. Oberleutnant Ulowetz is only 28, yet war has already spared him when it erased others. 4 patrols, 4 returns. Many commanders never made it back even once. The map beneath his hands marks their position north of Guernsey. These waters are lethal. The most aggressively guarded sea lanes in occupied Europe. British escort ships hunt here around the clock. No gaps, no mercy. Outside, the sky hangs low and colorless. In 6 hours, night will fall, and night changes everything. After sunset, a well-handled U-boat can strike unseen, slipping in, launching torpedoes, vanishing again before the escorts can react. That is the theory. That is the gamble. U-672 had entered the channel 3 days earlier. 3 days submerged. 3 days of silence. At depth, the crew of 52 moved with mechanical discipline, listening, waiting, counting propellers, measuring danger through sound alone. But the pattern was wrong. On the first day, a British escort closed in without warning. No gradual approach, no detectable buildup. The sonar contact simply appeared. Evasion worked, but only just. The second day, it happened again. Another escort, another sudden presence. Once more, depth saved them. By the third day, something new reached the hydrophones. A noise that didn't belong to destroyers. Didn't match merchant ships. Didn't match anything in the manuals. By the afternoon of July 18th, Ulowetz made his choice. Yes, enemy contacts were behaving strangely. Yes, the channel was crawling with patrols. Yes, the British were using technology Germany barely understood. But tonight was different. Somewhere ahead, a merchant convoy would move under cover of darkness. With the right timing, with precision, an attack was possible. An attack meant success. It meant returning to base with proof. It meant refusing to slink away like prey. Ulowetz looked around the control room. 52 young faces, most barely 20. Every one of them trusting him completely. He gave the order. We surface at 1,900 hours. We attack, then we dive. No one hesitated. The crew moved instantly, preparing the boat for battle with practice speed. What Ulowetz could not know was that this decision would be the final one he ever made as a free man. 50 kilometers away, aboard HMS Balfour, another reality was unfolding. Below decks, a British sonar operator leaned forward, headphones clamped tight. The signal was unmistakable. A submerged contact. German type E8C, depth 52 meters and descending. The report went straight to Lieutenant Commander Cecil Coventry. Coventry showed no excitement. No triumph. Finding the submarine was only the beginning. Now came the real work. What would the U-boat do next? What choices remained? What was its commander thinking? Coventry spread out the contact plot. Position, depth, speed. The submarine sat at 180 meters. Too deep to maneuver safely. Too shallow to disappear. There were only 2 options left to it. Dive deeper or prepare to strike on the surface. Coventry stepped to the bridge and watched the horizon darken. Night was approaching. Of course it would surface. A skilled commander would wait for darkness. He would gamble on a surface attack against the convoy. There was no other logical move. Coventry began calculating. If the submarine started its ascent at 1,900 hours, how long would the transition take from 180 meters? At what depth would it be most vulnerable? How much time would an emergency blow require? This was no chase anymore. This was mathematics, prediction, and a trap being set before the submarine ever broke the surface. 2 commanders, the same 4 hours, and 2 completely different understandings of reality. One believed the darkness would save him. The other knew exactly when and where that belief would fail. The calculations were effortless. Coventry turned to his crew. Stand by the depth charges. Then, after a pause, not yet, we wait. Far below the surface, aboard U-672, preparations were already underway. Ulowetz stood at the periscope, eyes fixed upward, waiting for night to arrive. His grip didn't shake. His thoughts didn't wander. He had executed attacks like this before. 4 successful patrols. 4 victories, this would be the 5th. At 14:45 hours, sonar aboard HMS Balfour reported new movement. The submerged contact had begun a controlled descent, slow, deliberate, roughly 20 meters per minute. Coventry did the math instantly. 180 meters, 20 meters per minute, 6 minutes to maximum depth. At that depth, the submarine would pause. It would wait for darkness. It would wait for safety. But safety no longer existed. Coventry was no longer reacting. He was planning in reverse. If the submarine intended to surface at 19, then everything before that moment could be predicted. Depth, timing, explosive placement, overlap. He wasn't chasing the submarine. He was designing a closing equation one with no escape term. Inside U-672, Lewaite checked his watch. 15 hours. 4 hours until nightfall. 4 hours until the attack. On HMS Balfour, Coventry checked his own watch. 15 hours. 4 hours until convergence. 4 hours to finalize the trap. Both men stared at the same stretch of time. Both understood what darkness meant. One commander was preparing to strike. The other was preparing to intersect with a level of precision no submarine doctrine could anticipate. Neither knew the other's thoughts. But both were bound by the same physics. And physics is indifferent to courage. At exactly 19 hours, Lewaite gave the command. Emergency surface. Full blow. Compressed air thundered through the hull. Ballast tanks emptied violently. U-672 surged upward through black water. The conning tower burst into open air. Lewaite climbed into the night. Total darkness. No moon. Perfect conditions. Ahead, the merchant convoy cut across the horizon. Dark silhouettes. Slow movement. Targets. The crew moved with rehearsed efficiency. 4 forward tubes. 2 reserves. Torpedoes armed. Men steady at their stations. Lewaite raised the attack scope. Range, bearing, target speed, torpedo speed. The numbers aligned instantly. Solution set, he reported. At that precise moment, Lewaite still believed he was the hunter. He was wrong. Aboard HMS Balfour, Coventry watched the sonar trace climb exactly as predicted, exactly as calculated, exactly on schedule. He issued the final orders. All stations ready. Depth charge, patterns prepared. Set fuses, 40, 50, 60, 70 meters. Sequential detonation. Await command. The crew locked into position, hands poised, eyes fixed on Coventry. Lewaite gazed once more at the convoy, the final image he would ever see as a free man. The trap had already closed. He never realized it. Fire. The command left Lewaite's mouth, and in that instant, everything was already decided. Aboard HMS Balfour, Coventry heard the torpedo launch ripple across the sonar display. He didn't flinch. Whether the torpedo struck or missed was irrelevant. The convoy was shielded. The escorts were exactly where they needed to be. In the brief seconds it took Lewaite to shout the order, Coventry had already spoken his own. All patterns converge. The first depth charges exploded at 40 meters. It wasn't noise. It was violence written into physics. A pressure front tore through the water faster than sound itself. U-672 lurched upward 3 meters in an instant. Lewaite felt his spine compress, his jaw slammed shut. Blood flooded his mouth. Men were thrown into the air like weightless objects, bones snapping on impact. The command table bent, steel warped. The pressure hull screamed. "Damage report," Lewaite shouted. No one heard him. The diesel engines died. Lights vanished. Bower collapsed. U-672 began to sink out of control. Then the second pattern detonated, 60 meters. This time, the force came from multiple directions at once. The submarine was crushed inward, squeezed by converging shock waves. Metal split open like torn flesh. Water burst through failed seams. Lewaite dragged himself upright. His left arm hung useless, clearly broken. "Prepare to surface," he ordered. "Emergency blow. This boat will not survive otherwise." The crew responded instantly. Drilled, automatic, but Lewaite felt it now. Something was wrong. The timing was flawless. The spacing exact. The strikes were arriving not randomly, but intentionally. Compressed air thundered into the ballast tanks. U-672 began to rise. Not smoothly, but wounded, unstable, disparate. The third wave of depth charges detonated during the ascent. The British had measured the depth, projected the climb rate, calculated the precise instant the emergency blow would engage. The fuses were set for that moment. This was not chance. This was systems. Equations, industrial precision that left nothing to luck. Explosions tore through the water at 70 meters, then 60, then 50. Each blast struck from a different angle. The hull groaned. Metal shrieked as steel surrendered to forces it was never meant to endure. Reports came in calm, professional, fatal. Forward, torpedo room flooding. Pressure increasing, compartment sealed. The officer speaking was describing his own end. Main engine seized. Battery compartment offline. The submarine was being dismantled by pressure and mathematics. Still U-600 og 72 kept rising. Compressed air continued to force it upward, a dying machine refusing to stop. The fourth pattern detonated at the surface. The explosion tore into the conning tower as it broke through open air. The blast ripped the structure apart. The railing Lewaite was holding vanished. He was thrown backward into the control room. The periscope shattered, the radio mast snapped away. Seawater poured through open gaps and cascading sheets, but the submarine was on the surface, broken, flooding, dying, yet surfaced. The crew being destroyed moments earlier now had a chance. Lewaite forced himself upright. His arm was shattered, his face was bloodied, but he was alive. He climbed toward the torn opening of the conning tower. Cold night air rushed in. Salt, diesel, smoke. The darkness was absolute. No moon. No stars, only the knowledge that somewhere nearby, HMS Balfour was circling. Lewaite raised his voice one final time. Abandoned ship. All hands exit through the tower, one by one. The crew surfaced into the black waters of the English Channel. 52 men scattered across the sea. U-672 still floated, but only barely. It was wounded beyond repair. Lewaite stayed on the conning tower for a final moment. He looked down at his submarine. The superstructure was warped and twisted. The pressure hull was deformed, scarred in multiple places where steel had failed. This boat would never sail again. Scuttle the vessel, he ordered. Open the sea valves. The command was carried out without hesitation. Courage could not save the submarine, so it would be destroyed deliberately. U-672 sank slowly. The bow dipped first. The stern rose, briefly standing upright against the night sky, like a marker. Then it slipped beneath the surface and vanished. All 52 men watched it disappear. All 52 were alive. All 52 would survive. Not as sailors, but as prisoners of war. Yet something inside Lewaite had been broken. Something deeper than bone. Floating in the freezing water, blood mixing with salt, clarity finally arrived. He understood exactly what had happened. He had made a sound decision. A logical one, the decision of a competent commander. And that decision had already been solved 45 minutes before he ever made it. Later that night, Lewaite sat alone in a cabin aboard HMS Balfour, a British naval blanket wrapped tightly around him. His body shook not just from cold, but from realization. Lieutenant Commander Coventry entered the room. He spoke in German. The accent was rough, but clear. Your submarine was detected by sonar at a distance of 2,000 meters, Coventry said calmly. We knew you would wait for darkness and attempt a surface attack. That is what skilled commanders do. He paused. We were already calculating the intercept. Lewaite remained silent. We never lost contact during your evasive maneuver, Coventry continued. We didn't need intuition. We needed only mathematics. Still no response. You decided at 1,500 hours to attack at 1,900, Coventry said. We began our calculations at the same time. The convergence was unavoidable. He leaned closer. You were not defeated because we are better tacticians, Coventry said quietly. You were defeated because you faced a system, not a weapon. A system? Sonar to detection, plotting tables to confirmation, depth charges fused to detonate at predicted moments. No single mistake required. No heroic countermove possible. There is no tactic against it, Coventry said. No evasión, no escape. Then his voice lowered further. Your high command does not yet understand what has changed. 1 year ago, hundreds of U-boats were lost. 1,000 submariners died. Berlin believed the problem was numbers, boats, fuel, resources. He shook his head. They were wrong. The truth is integration, coordination, systems working together, a sonar operator, a plotting table, a depth charge detonated at a calculated second, one submarine, one convoy, one outcome. Lewaite finally understood, not intellectually, but completely. Everything he had learned about submarine warfare was outdated. You were not defeated because you lacked courage, Coventry said. You were defeated because courage means nothing against systems designed to produce victory through industrial scale. This, he said, is what will lose the war. That night, Lewaite sat alone again. wrapped in a British blanket, shaking not from cold, but from truth. He had chosen the only option a skilled commander would choose. Attack under cover of darkness, strike, disappear. But the choice had never been his. It had been predicted, prepared for, solved. The British had not reacted to his move. They had anticipated it. The attack that destroyed U-672 lasted less than 5 minutes. 300 seconds from first detonation to abandonment. In those minutes, Lewaite grasped what German high command would not fully accept until the war was over. The Battle of the Atlantic was not lost because of too few submarines. Not because of torpedo shortages, not because of fuel or supplies. It was lost to mathematics, to coordination, to systems that turned human decision-making into something predictable and fatal. The war beneath the waves had not been lost to chance. It had been lost to alignment, technology working together flawlessly. Sonar located the target. Mathematics fixed its position. Depth charges it lost every escape path. And the most devastating truth of all, the commander's own logic became predictable. The decision to attack the correct decision was exactly what completed the trap. This was not about bravery. This was not about skill. It was equations, factories, systems operating without emotion. Against that, individual courage had no weight. The British sailors treated Lewaite with calm professionalism. They gave him dry clothing, warm coffee. They set his broken arm. They were courteous. That courtesy made the realization unbearable. They hadn't defeated him out of hatred. They hadn't won because they were fiercer. They had won because they had engineered something better. Worse still, they had created a system capable of predicting what a competent enemy commander would do and preparing for that decision in advance. Lewaite thought of his 52 men, young sailors who had surfaced into the water alive only because the British chose rescue over indifference. 52 survivors, 52 prisoners of war. For the next 18 months, they would ask the same question. Why hadn't experience saved them? Why hadn't their captain's judgment protected them? Lewaite knew the answer now. The choice to attack was not wrong. The world had changed around that choice. His training, his instincts, his rational thinking, all of it had become forecastable. A skilled commander in darkness would surface to strike a convoy. The British understood this certainty. They always had. They built their system around it. Lewaite was not beaten by stronger weapons. He was defeated by better mathematics. Lewaite survived the war. Released from captivity in December of 1945, he returned to Germany. He worked as an interpreter. Later, he managed a cigar factory. He lived until 2002. In his final interviews, he spoke often about July 18th, 1944, the day submarine warfare fundamentally changed. Unlike many German officers who blamed shortages and resources, Lewaite saw deeper. He said, "We believe courage, training, and determination could overcome any disadvantage. What happened to U-672 proved that belief was wrong." The depth charges were not revolutionary because of their explosive power. Submarines had survived worse. They were revolutionary because they detonated at calculated moments, coordinated through a system where every part knew what the others were doing and what the enemy would do. He explained it simply. A submarine that chooses to attack must surface. A surface submarine can be detected, and in 1944, a detected submarine was already dead. Then he would pause, and the most terrifying truth, he said, was that the moment I decided to attack, I had already lost. I didn't know it, but the British did. They solved my decision before I made it. That is when I understood something irreversible. Courage is only a variable in a physics equation, and we were trying to defeat physics with willpower. Lewaite would often fall silent at that point. Then he would add the thought that became his final testament. The Americans and the British understood what Germany did not. Wars are not won by the bravest soldier, or the smartest general, or the cleverest tactic. They are won by systems. Systems where every component, the factory worker producing ammunition, the sonar operator listening in darkness, the fire control officer calculating convergence, all work together toward a single inevitable outcome. Germany lost the Battle of the Atlantic, he said, because it believed in individual excellence while its enemies built machines that turned human decisions into mathematics. America and Britain prevailed because they placed their faith in systems, not in lone heroes. One way of thinking celebrates individual valor. The other invests in machines, coordination, and scale. By 1944, It was the machines that decided the outcome. Thank you for watching Tales of Valor. If the story of U-672 and Oberleutnant Lewaite stayed with you, support the channel by liking the video and subscribing. Our mission is to uncover the overlooked moments of World War II, the ones history rarely slows down to explain. Tell us where you're watching from. And let us know which forgotten stories of the Second World War you want us to bring to life next. Your comments and support make these documentaries possible. Here, we don't just recount battles, we examine history through the eyes of those who lived it. German commanders confronting the reality that bravery could not overpower systems. Japanese officers discovering that tactical brilliance meant little against industrial dominance. These are the moments when the nature of war changed. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more stories History Almost Forgot.